Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, how the heck are you? We are mid-December 2023 now. How are you doing? How's the winter? How are the holidays going for you? We're not really going to talk about it too much. Just always want to mention where we're at. Today's episode, I think, is a great episode with Jen. I don't want to give too much away, but we have such a framework culturally about what success means. And if you're neurodivergent, success is going to look way different. And I think we often are really hard on ourselves. We judge ourselves. For me, I feel like I'm not measuring up. I'm not doing enough. It doesn't look like the perfect picture. It's messy. It's human. It's authentic. And we really look at some specific things that I'm wondering if you were to reframe these, if you don't already, if it might change how you feel about how successful you are and how well you're doing. I don't know. I think it's a great episode. So I don't really want to give too much away. I just want to let you jump in. So now on to the show. Hey, Jen, how are you?
Hi, my dear. How am I? I'm good. I'm all right. Here we are right before Thanksgiving and I'm not pulling my hair out. So I guess that's a good sign.
That is good.
How are you?
Well, I think it's why I want to talk about what's going on today. I also feel like a little shame that really Thanksgiving is something that I shouldn't be proud about celebrating. And I want to look up woof and hoot and maybe rethink this for next year. That I just feel like, I don't know that this is something I should be proud about celebrating. And I'm really not into doing traditions and holidays, but there are a few that I like. So I feel torn, but maybe it just means learning how to do it differently. But this morning I was looking around the house feeling really overwhelmed and I've got piles of stuff that need to be picked up and I want to paddle tonight, which would be a really good choice for me. But it means that there's just a lot to do and I have help and I don't have to do it on my own. And I like being prepared. And so that's kind of why I wanted to talk about success, because I have a friend who always talks about how busy I am. And when I look at my screen report time at the end of the week, I have a full-time job being on my phone. And I'm on my phone playing games when I watch TV. So it's not like I'm sitting isolated on my phone. But it's so interesting that I don't see myself as being productive. So we're going to be talking about success today, but I'm thinking more in terms of productivity, that there's always more stuff to do. And I feel like I never do enough. And I think I'm probably pretty productive and pretty successful, but not in the ways that I measure it, which is why I thought maybe this is a good time to talk about it.
So how do we measure success, or how do we intentionally not measure, maybe reject some of the standard measures, right? If they don't suit us.
Right. And I think that the holidays are so wrapped up around not only the holidays, but in general, that things are packaged pretty. We're supposed to be packaged pretty. Like I don't dress up for holidays. On Christmas, we wear our pajamas. For Thanksgiving, probably we'll be in bare feet and whatever's comfortable to wear. And I was thinking about how dressing up makes me usually pretty uncomfortable. And we have this idea of how things are supposed to look. And what if we allowed things to be more authentic and real? And that's how we measured success. And I was thinking about this quote that I saw, which I love. And if this is the measure of success, then I'm doing okay. But it says success is measured by how safe people feel in your presence. Why don't we talk about that?
I love that.
Why does the world measure success in those terms?
I'm also thinking about it sort of intra-personally too. Like, how safe do we feel in our own skin? I guess it's interesting. So my confession about Thanksgiving and tomorrow, it's so funny. Depending on who you're talking to, I could say this and be full of shame if it's measuring against one standard. And then you've just beautifully set this up that I actually feel like, hey, last year we did a pie giving where we just did a series of pies. And honestly, tomorrow I do have some food. My My kids don't like turkey, so I have a chicken. But we might all just kind of go out for sushi, depending on my energy levels tomorrow, which lately have been unpredictable. So I think this is really asking with intention that question, like, what is a measure of success? And as far as the holiday, it is deeply problematic. And I don't know if I told you that story, but my daughter, like, challenging her teacher.
Oh, that's right. I think I was there. Yeah.
Talking about Thanksgiving. And then, like, she raises her hand and she's like, so when are we going to talk about, like, the genocide of the Native Americans? And the teacher just like, I looked at her and said, well, that's not in the curriculum, and my daughter's like, and I am proud of my little 11-year-old who these things just matter so deeply to her. And I guess I just want to voice, like, I have had people come at me like I'm stealing some sort of massive, first of all, it's not all me. Yes, we did try to educate our kids in ways that were not completely whitewashed and get them to be thoughtful, critical thinkers. And I've had people come at me that when you start not using those measures of success, you do have to expect some flack. Why aren't your kids happy? Like, why can't you just let them do the whole Pilgrims and Indian things? I'm like, well, because we're not. Like, we just, that it's not. If your measure of success is standing in truth or in authenticity and being able to be here in our household, hopefully, because my kids, they're young and they're mature in a lot of ways. It's that curiosity, but also commitment to kindness and compassion. And that can get rough, right? So, because I've watched them be just as intolerant of people who are not understanding, and watching my 11-year-old create space and balance and be emotionally intelligent with her classmates has been pretty fascinating. But all of this is to say, it's a really important question. I once read a quote that was really talking about just looking at different cultures, and each family also has its own culture. And like, my family, my life is not some failed attempt at my parents' lives or my sister's life or, anybody else's life. It's its own beautiful expression of life. And to me, like, if I can make sure that those measures of success are coming from somewhere in my heart and questioning, and there are some that I've adopted, I'm sure. I have to think about it for a minute. Measures of success. There's certainly some that are very practical as far as my own energy levels and being able to kind of keep this ship afloat over here. But yeah, I love the question.
Yeah. So let's talk about some of the ways that we can measure success that are not traditional to really reframe when we're doing our work and when we're showing up and living authentic lives. It may be messy and imperfect and not look like a Norman Rockwell painting. And is that okay? So the first thing on my list is the ability or willingness to have hard conversations, because I know that is something that not everybody's willing to do. And if you're listening and you're in a place where you choose not to, this is not to condemn you. This is just to say what my value is. And I will take that a step further to say being willing to continue to go in there and have hard conversations. And you and I had a little bump this week. We worked through it. And part of what we could either get hung up on the content. So I'm going to talk about this in terms of my husband, because I think that makes it easier. Been married 26 years. So I'm seeing a blank look on your face. So I'm thinking I transgressed. Did I do anything wrong by saying what I said?
Oh, no.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm a little
a blank look on my face? No. Yes.
I'm a little sensitive today.
Oh, no, thanks for checking with me. No, not at all. I was struggling to remember what the blip was, honestly. Like, what happened? Liv and I both get, like, we couldn't hold a grudge if we wanted to. Like, it's just not possible.
But in the moment, listeners, you got a chance to see how I do a reality check, because I'm feeling sensitive. We didn't talking about our blip. It happened just within the last few days and it's still kind of new. And I saw this look on your face and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. So this is how you navigate it. I'm making up a story in my head based on the look on your face. Is everything okay?
Yes. Thanks for checking.
Thank you. So talking about process over content. Been married for 26 years. There are certain things that I do that drive my husband bananas. There are things that my husband does that drive me bananas. As much as we talk about them, they still come up. And so that's content. So if the content is, I don't know, my piles on the table, like I always have piles on the table and I clean them up and I stay on top of them and then they pile up again. We don't argue about it, but using that as an example, we could continually argue about my piles on the table, or that's content. So it's the piles, or process, which is how does he feel when there's clutter in the house? How does he feel when he knows that it's important? I should know that it's important to him and I continue to have piles. So that's process. And with this blip that you and I had, we talked about this is probably going to come up again just by the nature of who we each are. And this happens in my relationship with my husband. And so being able for him to constantly talk about how frustrating it is for me to have my piles and me being able to hear that, because chances are the piles are not going to go away. I manage them, then I don't manage them. And there are things that he does as well, but being able to continually go back in as opposed to, we talked about this once and, you're not listening to me, Patricia, and you still have piles on the table. It's like, if I could manage my frickin' piles, I would. And I just don't seem to be able to do that. And there are things in relationships that we think people should be able to manage. And especially if you're neurodivergent, you can't. I was just talking to a friend this morning who has a very strong sense of order and was talking about a friend. I swear, Jen, this is not, I'm not making this up. This is somebody else. About somebody else who's late all the time. They were in a group together and this person is chronically late. And when she named it, the person got really upset. But what I was talking about with this literally other friend is that her wanting this other person to show up on time and her own need to have things be a certain way is both of their neurodivergence. And it's no more likely that this other person is going to show up on time than my friend is going to be able to surrender her need for order and things being a certain way. And when we are going to be in relationships with people, and often if we're neurodivergent, we choose other people that are neurodivergent because there's a greater understanding and we're probably going to bump up against each other's stuff. So circling back to what I started with is being willing or able to have difficult conversations and to continue to go back in there, knowing that my piles are probably always going to be there, but I'm willing to talk to my husband about how he feels about my piles for the rest of our lives, because that's probably going to be a reality.
Yeah. I mean, I like the process too, being like the how you talk about it, right? And how treat it between you. And gosh, my brain's like totally just lit it up in like so many different directions. I'm not sure which train of thought to follow. I was chuckling a little bit because I feel like I am in one person, the person that wants the order and lack of piles and the person that does the pile. And I'm thinking about love and unconditional love and loving things that you don't like about a person because that person is an autonomous, sovereign being and you can't control them, right? And barring abusive situations, of course. And I don't think that adult love should be unconditional, but there are some things that we can't march around not meeting life on life's terms and other people, how they show up in the world. I mean, we know that that's not going to work, right? So what are the strategies? Here's what you're talking about. And you're meeting in this beautiful space of, I get to be authentic. I get to really be truthful about my thoughts and feelings. And I'm not going to put them on you. That's not up to you to take care of them or to, it's really like, okay. And I was laughing because I have, a lot of laundry baskets around that are actually containing my piles, which had me thinking about just creative problem solving together, because that's life. That's what do we do? And it's not this either or option, but it's what are the new things that the world needs. I've been having lots of conversations about this with both schools that my kids are in when it comes to gendered bathrooms and stuff like that. How about we just dig in and get really creative? Evolution happens when it's not a this way or that way, but there's a new way, right? There's something new that's needed. And I think that that's a healthy relationship. That's healthy growth and evolution and things, is what you're talking about. And so this yardstick of, how do you measure success and being able to have hard conversations, I think, look at what can, like, what's the fruition, right? Like, look at what can come from that if you're willing to be open-hearted, hear the other person. One of the best things I ever invested in my own inner work is, and I think I've said this on the podcast before, so forgive me for repeating myself, but I think it deserves repeating, is losing the self-defensiveness, because that is really, to me anyway, it was I was no longer emotionally available if I'm trying to defend, and I don't have the humility to be like, oh, I'm messy. And in so many metaphorical ways. And, it's not just a Jen problem. That's a human problem. Yeah. And can we be kind with ourselves and with each other and creative?
Yeah. Two things I'd like to respond to. What I thought I heard you say is that we cannot unconditionally love adults, but I'm not sure that that's what you meant to say.
As a parent, I unconditionally love my kids and helping them grow into who they are. And small children need safe places to make mistakes and stuff like that. What I was saying was, I'm not the idea that adults who are functioning in many different ways, right? Like if you're having a household together and there's certain agreements that are made, those agreements are essentially conditions. And if agreements are violated too often, boundaries are needed, whatever those are. I like trying to find the places of challenge to love unconditionally, meaning I'm going to let this person just be who they are.
Right.
And that's not without some limits. So I was saying, I'm not sure how appropriate. I don't think that just, unconditional love is appropriate across the board between adults. I think there are some places where, here are the agreements, here are the expectations. We've decided to live in a way together, right? And if those things get violated, then that's pretty tough. We got to wrangle with that. But then inside of that safe container of agreements, there are definitely places, because a lot of us deal with magical thinking. And wouldn't it be nice if people we've talked about this, right? Just like showing up exactly the way you want them to all the time. That sounds lovely. And that's not realistic. It's not life. It happens sometimes, doesn't happen all the time. Everyone has limitations. So where are the places where as adults we do get to express unconditional love, which is by nature a little challenging, right? It's like, it means something. It's easy when it's easy.
Right. And I don't think that means that you can't feel angry, frustrated, disappointed in somebody's behaviors or shortcomings or limitations, that's part of it. And I think we think of unconditional love, meaning that we accept and we feel good about things all the time. And I just don't see that as being realistic. We can treat people respectfully, kindly, fairly, and we can still be really mad at certain behavior or certain limitations. Like both of those things can exist together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the second thing is, if you're someone who feels like your laundry should be folded and put away and your drawer should look like Marie Kondo, and the best you can do is to have baskets or bins that you throw your clean clothes in, that's okay. And again, I think that we get these ideas of what success looks like, and it keeps us from being where we're at and having limitations. And I'm just changing some of my accounts around, and I work with somebody from an institution, and historically I get really overwhelmed and I drop the ball. And this time I'm just trying to communicate what my limitations are. Every time we have something, I get very overwhelmed. It may take me a few days to get back to you. I need to come up with a system before I can tell you which account I want this drawn from, because I'm having to combine accounts and my brain needs to see how much money is in each account because they have different purposes. And it's been really interesting. And I said, it's not your responsibility to chase me. These things are hard for me. I'm telling you this because I don't want to drop the ball. And today I got something that says I need to sign some papers. And I wanted to say I'm really overwhelmed. And I thought that would be okay to share. But I said, I have a very busy day and I'm not sure that I'm going to get to it today. But I find that as I'm able to name what my limitations are, I usually am able to move through them. But if I don't name them, then they kind of stay on a subconscious level. And then I just don't deal with stuff because everything just feels so freaking overwhelming.
I really love what you just said and how empowering and how different it feels in my body when I hear you say I'm overwhelmed, versus like really standing in your sovereignty of, I have too busy of a day and I'm not going to get to this today, and just I don't know, I'm really kind of vibing on the power in that.
I have piles on my table and I can't deal with signing a paperwork and tell you which account it comes from.
Versus I have a lot going on. I mean, I don't think, I don't know. I don't think we give ourselves enough credit.
Right. Well, and it's interesting too. I want to get back to our topic. You know this. 3 years ago on Black Friday, I wanted to change out the pans that we used because I wanted to get, metal that was healthier for my body. So I found a stainless steel pots and pans set 3 years ago.
I love
count
this
them.
story.
1, 2, 3. And because I read that you have to season stainless steel, the box sat in my closet for 1.5 years because it felt like too much to season it. And then 1.5 years ago, I thought, this is crazy. I need to take these out and season them. So 3 years minus 1.5 years. Guess how long that box has been sitting in my kitchen unopened? 3 years. And I went out with a friend the other day and was telling her about this. And she's like, you don't have to season stainless steel. So of course I had to go home and check for myself because I'm a checker. And sure enough, you don't. And so that night I took them out of the box. I put them out on the table. I took pictures. I sent you a picture of, look, I finally took them out, 3 years later, washed them. I've used them a couple times. I'm sharing this with you because when we get overwhelmed by things, this is what happens. 3 years ago, I could have been using the set of pots and pans, and we packed up the other ones and are holding on to them just in case these don't work. And again, I'm sharing this with you because if this is how you operate and you feel like, ooh, I'm the only one, you're not. We have to do what we have to do. And how does this go back to success? It's okay to procrastinate. It's okay for things to sit in a box for 3 years. It's okay to save stuff if you're not sure that you're going to like the new stuff, that you can't screw it up, that it's okay to be messy and imperfect and to procrastinate. And all of these things are being human, and it's really okay. And there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just had a lovely client the other day say, you can't say the wrong thing to the right person.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that kindness and curiosity goes a long way. And I mean, hopefully what we can do is we can expand the sphere of people that we are able to do that with.
Yeah. So it's okay to change your mind. I think we often want to make the perfect decision. We do all this research and we don't want to make the wrong decision. I mean, I have a couple things that I need to order and I get overwhelmed every time I need to get a new mount for the wall for my son. My son finally got into the Navy, so that's the good news. And he's going to be getting rid of some of his stuff, and I want the bigger TV that he has. And every time I go online to look at the mount, like I get really overwhelmed. And so I just have to keep going back to doing that. So it's okay to change your mind. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to choose and re-choose. It's okay if I get a mount and I decide it doesn't work and I need to get a new one. Like, how much do we pin ourselves into a corner because we want to make the right decision with all of the factors? And then if we make a decision and we don't like it, or we re-choose, or we decide we want something else, and we beat ourselves up, like, it's okay. It's okay.
It really is okay. Yeah. I mean, as someone that, dropped out of a doctoral program and has started life over a couple of times, that's alive, right? That's dealing with whatever's present, and we don't have that much control, and we have some, and we have power, and we have lots of things. But you know what you're making me think of? You're making me think of Gabor Mate and that one tenet that I love so much that I'm not sure we get enough of, which is unstructured play in childhood, to start this framework that will then take with us into our adulthood. That it isn't, I always use soccer for an example, but you could use any example of like, here, take this soccer ball and get it in that net. And then I think, as adults, it's like, okay, I got it. There's one way to do it. Well, there's lots of ways to put a soccer ball in a net. I'm sure I'm not a soccer player, but I hope I didn't offend any soccer players out there. But the point being that unstructured play is you're in this co-creative relationship with your life, with your future, with everything in it, your environment. And it really is okay. And not only okay, but can get to a place where it's really joyful. Like, we're not on tight ropes. We are on, a nice wide hiking path full of different places to explore and things to do and people to meet and things.
Right. And with the doctoral program, maybe the answer is absolutely no. Maybe it's not now. Maybe it's not this one. That trying and failing, trying and readjusting, those are all okay. But I think that we think success is this linear path, or we get an insight and then the behavior should change and we shouldn't ever struggle, or we live our lives in ways as to not become dysregulated. We don't want to set boundaries. We don't want to have difficult conversations because they're uncomfortable. And I support you in self-care. So please understand, I am not implying in any way that you should be living reckless lives that put you in a dysregulated state all the time. That is not what I'm saying, that you need to listen to yourself. And if you are living a messy life and you're dysregulated and you're having to re-choose, that's not necessarily a bad thing. That sometimes we have to wiggle, try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try, succeed, that those are okay things. And how can we make it more okay that we can be messy? Because I think people want to do the right thing so they don't get dysregulated or don't get upset or don't make a mistake. And what if we just relax that and said, it's okay to be sloppy and messy? It's okay to break things or spill things. You clean it up and then you try again.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I was also thinking about impulse control. So people tend to be either externalizers or internalizers. So externalizers are probably going to get mad, lose their cool, become upset more often, and internalizers are going to kind of hold it in. So for the externalizers, maybe it means having better impulse control. And for the internalizers, it means loosening up and having less internal control. I was thinking, my son is here and he's playing golf with my husband, and my son gets frustrated on the golf course. And my husband had a conversation with him about not getting mad, that he needs to not get mad. And my son will go like, you're right. And I talked to both of them and I said, I don't think that's a very realistic goal, because I don't really want to say something where my husband struggles with impulse control and using that as an example. And I didn't say that, and I'm not going to share it on the podcast, but it is running through my mind.
You know what I call those things? Or actually, I don't know who gave this to me. I can't remember. But dead guy goals. Like if it's something that's easier for a dead guy to accomplish than a living, breathing human being, is probably not the right goal. Now, how do we hold anger, and how do we behave, and what do we do? And those are not things dead guys can do. And that's where we actually have a chance of being able to learn, grow, make a different choice. Right. And for some people, it depends. Like for some people, really telling someone off is something they've never dared do before. And that's maybe on their soul syllabus to grow. And other people who are so very comfortable and used to telling everyone off need to sit with their shirt a little bit.
Right. That's a thought that should stay in your mind. And we can't control the impulse. So if my son is playing golf and he misses a shot, he cannot control that initial reaction where he gets angry, frustrated, disappointed, upset. You cannot control your initial reaction. You do have choices what you do with it afterwards. And so we talked about, he can go, I'm really mad, I'm frustrated, I hate when I miss the ball. This is like, I want to have a better game. What are things that he can do that are, I don't know what the words are, but a more contained choice for expressing that energy without making it unpleasant for the people around him? Because that's part of what the concern is, that he's playing golf with my other son before my other son leaves in the Navy, and it's not feeling fun because we're all a little tense right now. We're having feelings about Josh leaving. So we're bound to have, I had a 30-minute fight with my husband over my son's dog before my son even got here a week ago when he came. And it wasn't about the dog. It was about our grief and sadness about Josh leaving. Yeah. So knowing that grief is going to come out in probably bickering and piddly ways, but also wanting the two of them to be able to enjoy a little bit more of their time together as they're trying to connect before Josh leaves. And if Daniel's losing his stuff, then it's not fun.
Yeah. Well, and it's just we want to see the flexibility, right? You're right. The number one. And think about it. It's like nobody says, okay, let me dial up the become enraged, flip the table and rage quit thing,
Right.
It just kind of, but it's the behaviors. It's the second, third, fourth, fifth.
Right.
Which thoughts are you going to buy? Like what story? Like that's where things are workable.
Right.
I'm smiling because I used to play a game with my kids where it's like, okay, give me 2 or 3 things that would have been even worse than what you did. which was always fun. And a couple of things that might have been alternatives, to whatever it was that was happened. And I mean, I should probably play that game with myself a little bit.
Well, when we talked earlier about my friend and her need for order and her friends arriving late and the internalizing and externalizing, that my husband and Daniel are externalizers. Josh and I are internalizers. And so we have very high emotional control. Is it good for me? Does it hurt me? No, it's not good for me. Yes, it hurts me. And I think that Josh and Daniel, when they get into it, it's hard for Josh to understand because he can control those things. Does it come at a cost to him? Absolutely. But that's not what we're talking about. So I think there's also an intolerance and a frustration. And Josh has always made choices that whatever Daniel does, Josh will do the opposite. And Daniel's gregarious and outgoing and, very expressive. And Josh tends to be the opposite of whatever Daniel is. So I want to be clear that even though I'm using this as an example, I don't want to give the impression that, Daniel is a raging out of control person. He's a lovely, both of my boys are lovely, but just for the sake of using an example. But how we can have an intolerance and lack of understanding is I can control it. How come you can't? I can arrive on time. How come you can't? And having this expectation that other people should be able to manage the things that we manage, but we have our own things that we don't manage.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I do think that a lot of us kind of expect to get us when we're dealing with things and with other people and their reactions. And that's just the kindness and the curiosity and the appreciation that that's a sovereign being that could be wired differently than you. And there's a whole universe there you'll never understand fully, but to at least attempt and be open to hearing what that, I love. That's, again, my favorite parenting question is, what do you want me to understand about whatever experience, whether it's
I love
on the golf course or like whatever it is, what was that like for you?
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that the humility that comes with hearing that feedback. Like I'm fascinated by, my kids and their experience and how they see the world. And as far as parenting goes, and I think this also applies to other relationships, but it's really pertinent to parenting because, what is your parenting philosophy, right? Is it that you have to shape these beings to think and feel like you do? Like, I mean, or is it more like tending them and getting curious about who they are and how they think and just being on the journey with them?
Yeah. One of the things that you and I have talked about a lot is, are you able to attune to somebody else and to be where they are, seeing things through their eyes? And this is something that not very many people can do. So if you have a child, a partner that has a hard day and tells you about it, do you want to go in and fix it or have them see the other perspective? Or are you able to really see what they're experiencing? I struggle with this with one of my kids, and it's an ongoing conversation because you'll have to figure out which one it is. Hint. When he gets upset, he just kind of goes off. And I feel like my job is to bring him back to center. And so I end up not being with him in the moment. And my thought or my fear is that I'm going to validate something that feels like it is so not grounded in reality. And I've asked him, we've had this conversation a few times, like, do you come back to center? Do you know that you're out there? And he's like, oh yeah, I know that. And it is so, as a therapist or a coach, I can be here from my clients. Absolutely. When it comes to my kid, I'm like, oh my gosh, he's like, what he's saying is just so out there. Like, oh my gosh, I need to bring him back. And I fail to attune to him when that happens. And then he usually goes, okay, goodbye. I'm not meeting his needs.
It's lonely, right? Because it's that sense of loneliness, right? That there's not this like shared, I don't know. I know with my kids, I often will, okay, well, let me get this straight. This is how you see it. And even that, like, this is how you see it, it's like, I guess that when not said skillfully, or it could feel invalidating, but I mean, it's just a truth that there are multiple perspectives and I want to understand your perspective and I have my own perspective. Right. And if you're not chasing, like, there's one truth out there, which is something I really wish we could all just sort of kind of do away with, right? There's just, okay, I really want to understand how you see it and understanding that, of course, I'm going to experience it differently. You know, even just you're 14 and I'm 50. Like, we're going to have a different vantage point on this. It's as natural as standing on another side of a sculpture, and I'm seeing the back of the sculpture and you're seeing the front of the sculpture. There's nothing to fight about here. Like, it's just, we have different eyes on an experience.
Yeah. We need to wrap up. So I'm just going to kind of rush through the rest. And then if you have something to say, we have time for that. The other thing is being okay with not knowing, not having answers, being in that uncomfortable place. And I know for many of us that want boxes, labels, want certainty, we live in the binary, that to be in that place of not knowing can be really uncomfortable. But the more we learn to manage that distress tolerance, I silently correct people, so I'm correcting myself out loud, the less we suffer. And of course, all the things that we're not talking about that to me are givens of, are you doing things that bring you joy? Do you have peace? Do you have rest? Those things are all important. But I think these are the things that we don't talk about, which is what my focus is for this episode. So because we're not mentioning all those yummy, delicious things does not mean that those aren't important. So I want to give you a chance to see if there's anything else that you want to add before we wrap up.
Uncertainty, living in uncertainty. That's something I've managed to get pretty good at. I'm going to make a lot of people that I speak to are very uncomfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
The case I would make for it is just, to me, it feels like this very lush, fertile clearing of possibility of, I don't know. I'm here with my resources. I don't have to know. Like, that's what, when I say fertile, I mean, that is where creativity is birthed, right? Like, that is where new things can come. If you feel so certain, like, I would rather be in this space of, than, 3 or 4 blocks, like running down a path of either wrong knowing or just being so deeply in a perspective that I can't see other perspectives. And, there are reasons, I'm sure, to visit different places like that, but to keep coming back to and to feel, it feels so threatening from what I understand, this, I don't want to not know. I don't want to not be certain. I want to be certain. I want to know. But to me, there's been a lot of peace and possibility and creativity and all this like really good stuff in this space of, I don't know, And so my case for uncertainty and making friends with that uncertainty is, it is this very, very creative space where really anything can happen.
Yeah. All right. We need to wrap it up. Have a great day. Thank you for being here. I love and appreciate you.
Love and appreciate you too, my dear. Bye.
All right. Bye. Hey again. So what did you think? What resonated with you? Are there things that you can let go of and maybe reframe so that it feels like it's okay to be human and imperfect and messy and have a little bit more acceptance around that? I'm assuming that you don't. That could be wrong. I don't know. If you are interested in working with Jen, you can reach out to her at Jen@Heartfulness Consulting. If you're interested in working with me, you can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. I have a contact me sheet on my website. The next online HSP course is going to be coming up February 5th and running through April 15th, 2024. I did have somebody who just took the last course and we extended an extra 5 weeks who is autistic. So if you are interested in learning about the topics, which are mindfulness and self-compassion, identifying negative messages and turning them into your strengths, perfectionism, embracing our emotions, self-care is non-negotiable, boundaries, communication, authenticity, and vulnerability, and creating a lifestyle that honors the HSP. And we talk about expectations and disappointments. I think these are things that you're neurodivergent, you just struggle with in general. And we don't really learn how to navigate a lot of the things that Jen and I are talking about today. If you have not been in a group of other people that are wired like you, to me, it doesn't matter if you identify as HSP or autistic. I think that sense of feeling connected and that sense of belonging can be really important. And what I hear is for people that don't like groups, this is really different. It's a small group. I really manage it. We look at finding shared traits and having really a sense of belonging and connection. Will you meet people that you will be friends with for forever? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But I've had quite a number of people that identify as introverts, that don't like groups, that have said this felt really different. And We have a chance to talk about what goes on in the group. There are weekly emails that are sent out that have a link with a video that Jen and I made together on each of the topics. There's extra videos and things you can look at if you want extra resources. And then in group, it's really open to talk about either the topic or whatever's going on, because it all circles around and we cover these things anyways. If you have any questions or you want more information, if you go to my website at unapologeticallysensitive.com and go to the HSP groups page, there are 1-minute little audio clips. There are some videos. There are quite a few podcast episodes that I've done with previous participants of the HSP course. Registration will start January 10th through January 16th. That's early bird registration at $675. So that's 10 weeks, an hour and 20 minutes. So tell me where you can do a group that's over an hour for $65 a group. I think that people see the price and they feel like that's a lot, but if you look at that, anyways, registration will continue January 17th through January 24th, and it's $700. The price will go up and you can register. There will be a registration button on the HSP groups page starting January 10th. I think that's all I have. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's how your brain is wired. You have a right to be messy, imperfect, to take up space, to not know what you want, to have piles in your house, to show up late, to show up early, to be super organized, to be very disorganized, to be mixed, to be organized and structured in some areas and not organized and structured in other areas. You have a right to have expectations and disappointments. You have a right to have big feelings. You have a right to feel sensitive. You have a right to cry. You have a right to show up however you want. And if the holidays are feeling hard and stressful and overwhelming, you have a right to take it easy and to say no. You have a right to have joy and pleasure and fun and flow. I think that's all I have. Have a blessed day.